Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you the first of what is hopefully many Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports. Now this is a test. I am testing out various different aspects of the rules, trying to show people in the community how the game is played now with the Age of Sigmar so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not this is the game for you. I encourage you to try it though. The PDFs are downloadable for free. If you're already a Warhammer Fantasy player, you've got at least one army, maybe several. It doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of time to go and give it a shot. It is a different game. There are different rules. You'll obviously still be able to use all of your models, unless you're Cast Dwarves. That's a whole other story, but maybe that's coming. But you're able to build out an army and play the game, and it's obviously going to be a different mechanic in terms of how to play. It may not be everybody's flavor. I'm not judging anybody. All I'm doing is suggesting, hey, give it a shot. And what I'm just trying to show is, what does it look like? How does it play? How is there balance? And how is there imbalance? And what are the things that are different about it? And whether or not you like it, you can make up your own mind. Now, the biggest source of contention right now is the fact that there is no real organized list building method. And a lot of people are very concerned that the way that you build an army is just Wild West. It's open and it just creates all kinds of unbalance. But I think a lot of people are missing that there are some conventions that are built in to try and combat that. I think a lot of people are also missing the fact that not all battles and not all combats and not all even real world situations, even though this is not real world, are always fair and balanced. And if you're looking for something that is built for a competitive environment, this is not this is not your game out of the box. It may come to pass with comp, or maybe something that GW releases down the road, or the community eventually builds. But hey, let's deal with that another time. Let's try this game with the rules as they've been released and see how it works. And the biggest thing again is lopsided armies, if there's no way to even things out with points, and whether or not the sudden death situation, that rule actually can counter that if it comes into play. And then of course the most important thing is it fun? Is it challenging? Is it interesting? And of course also, is it the kind of game that I want to play? You will only be able to decide that when you play. So here's my experience, and what we decided with the guy that I linked up with is a competitive player. His name is Andrew. He has been in a number of tournaments at the only game in town. He might go to other local game stores, and he plays a Skaven army. And we decided to pull some war scrolls out of the army book PDFs that have been released in the back, and see if they match up. And we wanted to try and change up some of the conventions of like for instance, a Skaven army that is huge and is always the one that's outnumbering in model count. Well, maybe what happens if it's not the one that's outnumbering, and how does that come into play? And then try to see if some of the elements of the game are more than just, hey, let's all meet in the middle and scrum in a big combat, a big cloud of models. Are there elements of the game that incorporate strategy? Are there other elements of the game that could be interesting? There's a narrative to the game that just creates itself as you play, and you can decide for yourself. But this is what we decided to do. We threw out the two lists, and you can go and take a look at that on the PDFs. Excuse me. We decided with the vampire counts we would use the charnel pit carrion. There was a a download going back a couple of years, a battle scroll that had this with the Garden of Moor. So this is kind of a take on that, but it's not quite as crazy or overpowered. You could still, of course, use a Garden of Moor, but it's not part of this list. But it just includes a Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist, which it sounds like it's crazy powerful, and it is pretty tough, as any of the mounted creatures or big monsters are in the game with all the wounds that they have. But it doesn't have a very high save, so a lot of attacks are going to get through, and a lot of them are going to get failed, and eventually it's going to get whittled down. So it's definitely not. It's got a lot of offensive punch, but it's a glass jaw. 1 unit of Crypt Horrors, 3 unit of Crypt Ghouls. And there's some rules that come into play that give additions. If you're next to the Ghoul King, these units can have pluses to hit, pluses to wound. There's some situations where you can get a bonus damage. The Ghoul King has one spell that he can cast that enhances things. There's of course the Inspiring Presence, where you can make one unit immune to battle shock. There's a lot of different options. The one that we went up against with my vampire accounts against Andrew Skaven is called Verminous Claw Pack, and this one doesn't have a caster. We could have added it, but again, we have a weak caster against no caster. This was the first game we played, we wanted to see if we can make it a little bit more of a speed game. So he didn't take a caster. He could have. So he just wanted to take it straight up from the actual war scroll. So this has a warlord. It has a unit of storm vermin, 3 clan rats, and 3 weapon teams. And there's no distinction on how many models that need to be in these units, other than maybe the minimums. Crypt Horrors, I think, is 3. Crypt Ghouls, you need to have a minimum of 10. And there may be some minimums also with the storm vermin and clan rats. But in terms of maximums, we did not decide that. We decided that we wouldn't go out of control. We wouldn't go and have like 100 guys for each of these units. Not that I have 100 Crypt Ghouls, but even Crypt Horrors, but even so, the idea is to put something on the table with this schematic in mind. And we didn't create the schematic. This is in the battle scrolls. So these are guidelines on how to build your list, guys. And then we would throw them on the table and then see what happened. So what would happen was, let's go into the deployment. We also put down a bunch of terrain, and we decided we wanted to roll to see what kind of impact the terrain would have on the game. So we made sure that we had, I think it was like 6 pieces of terrain, but we didn't apply any rules to the walls. And in this particular game, let's see, we have a forest that is considered deadly, which is if anybody runs through it, it's like dangerous terrain tests on a 1. The model is slain. That's pretty severe. The rocks are considered damned, which is if you're within 3 inches, you can sacrifice a model in. I think it's sacrifice D3 models from your unit. And you can get +1s until your next hero phase. That's pretty good. We have ruins that are on the other side of the road, and those are considered mystical. Now, every unit within 3 inches has to make a test. If you roll a 1, you're confused and you can't do anything. If you anything 2 to 6, you then have your ability to re-roll wounds, which is absolutely enormous. And then we have a crater in the upper right. And that one is also, that's considered deadly. So anything that moves over it or finishes on top of it, again, difficult terrain test. On a roll of 1, the model is outright slain. And then we had some ruins off to the right, and they're considered sinister, and that gives fear. And fear in this game, at least from what I can see, because I don't see fear in any of the vampire accounts unit abilities, but fear in terms of this terrain is just basically a -1 to your battle shock test. So it's as if you lost an extra model that was slain. So we have some robust terrain and some effects that can impact the game, and I think that that's going to make for an interesting game. So when we deployed, and I'm going to show deployment. Usually I would just take a picture to show after deployment's been made. But deployment is a very complicated and very diverse thing in this game. It's very important. It's very strategic, because even if you have a battle scroll that you've planned out, you could certainly initiate another war scroll. You can just add in individual units or individual models apart from just an individual battle scroll that you want to fill out for its requirements. But you could stop at any time and then decide that I'm done deploying, and then your opponent has to be concerned with whether or not they're going to exceed your total model count by 33%, a third, and then if that's the case, that the person who's at a disadvantage in model count then can decide which one of the sudden death options they wish to take, and that can help them with an objective that can win the game even though they're outmatched. So in this case, we started deploying, and the first thing that he put down was a unit of clan rats next to the ruins that gives you the rerolls, and then I put down a unit of ghouls off to the right. He put his warlord right next to his clan rats, again more towards the center. I put another unit of ghouls, and what I was really here mapping out was just the outer edge of the 18-inch range for the Ghoul King, for him to cast a particular spell, which I believe is, it allows for, let's see if I can find it, it allows for, within 18 inches, if you cast it, and again, he only can cast 1 spell, the Ghoul King, It's called Black Hunger, and you can make an extra attack with those units, which is awesome. But there's other abilities that come into play from the that you get by finishing and fleshing out the actual war scroll. In this case, I can get extra hits, not extra hits, extra pluses to hit and extra pluses to wound if I'm within a certain range of the general. So these are important things to note when you're actually using a war scroll. So next moves, he put down a pretty good sized unit of storm vermin, and then I put my last of my 3 ghoul units. And then another unit of clan rats. So we're starting to stack up the middle and starting to weight towards the right of the board now. I put right dead center my crypt horrors. I was hoping that I could try to log jam his center at some point and then try to, heavily weight heavily on one side or the other, and then maybe try to split his forces. And that's a pretty good target unit. At least it was an 8th. So we're going to test that out. He puts down his warp fire thrower team with the clan rats down the center, and then I put the last of my units because again I'm first to finish deploying, which is very unusual for vampire counts. A Strigoi Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist, and again I'm trying to put him dead center so that he's within range of any of the things that any effects. There's some effects where if I'm within 15 inches that are based on the war scrolls for the crypt horrors and the crypt ghouls that allow for things like additional attacks or re-rolling of failed attacks or re-rolling of failed wounds. So there's some nice real enhancements that can really affect the game if you're smart about it. He puts down another unit of clan rats and then the rest of his weapon teams, which are two Ratling guns. So here's the board, and you can see that we're starting to try, even though it's a skirmish type scenario, we're trying to keep some cohesion with the units. So you can see even with with his storm vermin and my ghouls, if there's 10 of them, we have 5 in front, 5 in a second rank below, and you know what, that really helps. And I would suggest that even if you're using movement trays, put your stuff down on movement trays, put them in a block formation. When you need to fold in, excuse me. You can fold in as you need to and then remove the trays if it gets too cumbersome. But once they start meeting up and you start grouping stuff up, you don't have to group up in a mishmash. You could try to group up in even ranks and in lines. And you know what? The scrums turn into something that's a little bit more organized. And it doesn't take away from who can hit what and who's in range of whatever. And you'll see what I mean when we get a little bit closer, because my earlier tests, excuse me, my earlier tests really just were clouds of skirmishing groups, and it's hard to keep track of. And the way we did in this game was a little bit more uniform. So, excuse me, since I was outgunned here in terms of volume, again, strange thing for both sides of this coin. I was able to determine what I wanted to pick for a sudden death scenario. Now, I didn't want to pick just a model, and I would have had to pick his Warlord. And his Warlord has a special ability where he can pop out of combat. So he can get his licks in and then remove himself from a combat. So if you're stuck in with another unit, you can't get back at that character. And I knew that was going to be almost impossible. Or at least very unlikely. And I didn't want to make it a piece of terrain that was right, the closest one. So I wanted to make it something further. So I picked this crater, which is on his side of the board, in the corner. It's going to be hard to get to. I need to just get a unit in there and have a unit survive by the end of turn 4. So some of these things that you can also pick are hiding a unit until the end of turn 6, which is a little bit harder, but at least you have the whole game turn up to turn 6 to try and get somebody if that happens. But that I don't like that one. I don't like, you could take a model and just hide it somewhere. Yes, it's out of the game effectively, so it may even out a little bit of the lopsidedness, but I wanted to pick something where it was mobile so we can see what is this game like mobility wise. So I picked the crater. So turn 1, I get the first turn, and we start doing some of the casting and some of the hero abilities. So the first thing I do is I want to put, again, I want to stick that Crypt Horror unit in the center. I also don't know if I'm not going to be able to get any charges in this turn, but if I push him out there up front and he's able to get charged, even a long charge, I want to try and protect him. So all wizards have Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield, so I threw up a Mystic Shield. He didn't have a caster, so I just had to make the roll. He couldn't unbind it, and I was able to succeed on a 6 or higher. So the Crypt Horrors have now a Mystic Shield. Their 5-up save is now a 4-up. Then I use the command ability for my Ghoul King, which again, within 18 inches, I can add +1 to hit and wound rolls for all Flesh Eater keyword units, and that's all these units. So that's just the way this scroll is built, so it makes sense. So movement, I start swooping my ghouls over with a run to the right. I know where my objective is. I want to try and clog up the center of the board, then move some of these extra units off to the swing right so I can try to get to it. And I move my Cryptars straight up. So try to get in the middle of the board, command the center of the board, tar pit anything that comes towards it. And then both of my ghoul units moving up on the right side of the board. So if one of them gets stuck in, at least the other one could swoop around and still try to get to the crater. And then I move my Ghoul King right up in the middle of all, again, within full range, 15 to 18 inches for each of these abilities. Not within the range of anything to scream yet. It's got a 10-inch scream, by the way. And one thing to note, monsters and any characters mounted on monsters, or any real uber characters even, as they get hurt, as they get wounded, they diminish in their ability. So it's the kind of thing where they have a real good ability to stick in there and tar pit units also, because they don't have to worry about the battle shock as much, because it's slain models, not wounds taken. So if you slay the model, it doesn't matter. But if it has 10 or 15 wounds, if it's taken 5, it doesn't matter. You haven't lost a model in that battle, so they can really stick in there and really do some damage to large units. But again, the idea is that you want to support it, but they don't have to worry about it as much. I'm not worried. I don't want to overextend and get them into combat just yet. But I want to, I want to pick and choose where my battles are. But I also want to be a little cautious. But I want to get them in where where it's going to do the most damage. So we go to Skaven turn. Skavens move up with their storm vermin. He's still staying out of where it's going to be a reasonably long range for a counter charge. I mean, a charge from my Cryptars. So he didn't move up his full move, but he wants to get a little bit closer so that if I don't charge or if I fail my charge, he can then counter charge. He moves one of his weapon teams up a little bit. And then he starts moving the rest of his clan rats and weapon teams as well. So he's supporting everything pretty systematically, and he's keeping a lot of stuff next to those ruins so he can test. If he rolls a 1, he's going to have to do nothing. But if he doesn't roll, if he rolls a 2 to 6, guess what? He's going to get re-rolls on any wounds. That's pretty smart. So one of his rattling guns takes aim and wipes out 4 of my ghouls on the left-hand side. The other one takes aim at my Cryptars. And despite the saves and the multiple wounds, I take a bunch of wounds. I don't lose a model. That's key. And the Cryptars, among many of the undead units, can slowly but surely regain wounds. They can heal back. Some of them have banners like Skeletons and Graveguard, where they actually gain back models that have been slain. These units you cannot restore the models that have been slain, but if they have multiple wounds, they can start recovering them. So Cryptars each turn will get one of these wounds removed. So turn 2, and this is where the next element really comes into play that I like so much, and that is that you at the beginning of each turn, you roll to see who gets the first turn. So there's a good chance, 50-50, that if you got the bottom of turn 1, you might get the top of turn 2, 2 turns in a row. That can really come into play in this game, and I like that randomness. So I managed to get the first turn in turn 2, and I start moving up my Cryptars. So now I'm in a great position. I think I need a 4 on a 2-die-6 to actually charge in and be able to take out his storm vermin, and I want to occupy his storm vermin. I don't want them. These guys are more mobile than I am. I mean, I do have some pretty good mobility with movement 6 for most of these units. Well, actually, all these units. But still, he's a little bit faster than me, and I'm outnumbered, so I just can't take the chance if I want to be able to hit the objective and secure a victory. So I move those guys up, and I go and I move my Ghoul King. Now, this might look a little bit, a little bit too forward here, but I'm looking to actually charge in those ghouls to also lock up the clan rats. And if the storm vermin are locked up, then I don't have to worry about a counter charge against my Ghoul King. And if my Ghoul King can get in on this clan rat unit, he's going to do a lot of damage. But I want to get in there and get a scream off. And when I do charge in, when I fold in, because you can move, I didn't do a run here. You can then fold in, and by doing that, I can reorient the Ghoul King and the Terrorgeist to face towards the Clan Rat unit, opening up the lanes for the other 2 units to charge. So I go ahead in the shooting phase, and I target that Warp Fire thrower, which I do not like. It has, even though I have a 5-up save only, The fact is that the thing is a mortal wound giver, and what it does is it negates any of the saves. So if he wounds, you take the save. I mean, you take the wounds, and I don't need that. I don't want to whittle down this Terrorgeist to nothing. So I scream it off. It dies. He opts to take one of the options where he opts to go in and have his wounds diffused to one of his nearby units. But I do so many wounds, it's only a 4-up for each wound. So some of them still applied to the weapons team, which wipes it out, and then he loses about 2 or 3 of his clan rats to boot. So then my charges come into play, and this is one of those things that's very different from Eighth. Charges happen and shooting happens at different times. And magic and innate abilities happen at the very beginning of the turn. So I declare charges, and I just put down the charge markers just to denote who's charging what. And I've got some long bomb charges, but some of them should be pretty fairly default. And I go ahead and I move in the Cryptars, no problem, against the Storm Vermin. This is a good Tar Pit unit against a tough unit in the Storm Vermin, so I'm hoping I can keep them held up for a little while. And easily get my Terrorgeist in on the Clan Rats, but I fail with one of the Ghoul units. Now, the second of the Ghoul units did not move. Well, he moved, but he didn't charge. And his thing is, again, I'm looking to lock these units up and then rush that Ghoul unit up to the objective, so I can secure a victory. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. There's more than just meeting at the middle and fighting. There are objectives. There are scenarios, and when you're outmatched or outgunned, even though I have a Terrorgeist, there is some more dimension to the game where actually it made the game more interesting as a result, and you'll see even more in the coming turns. Now, I made a long charge with my ghouls on the left, and I was able to get them into range with these clan rats. And there's a lot of clan rats here, but I should be able to do some damage. I'm just trying to hold them up or thin them out. I go and do a bunch of hits, bunch of wounds, 5 wounds. He saves all of them. So lots of wounds, just like it was in Eighth with ghouls. Crypt ghouls put out 2 attacks each, but they don't have any rend abilities. And if you have a decent armor save, you'll be able to have a good chance to save. In this case, he was able to do 5-ups and got them all. So I didn't do any wounds. That's not good. And that was my first. Now you get to alternate. Now I pick a unit that I want to I do my combat. Then you pick another. It doesn't have to be the same unit. It could be a different unit on the table that's in close combat. So he opts to pick the Storm Vermin. They fold in, so if there's any that are further away, then you can fold in 3 inches and kind of start surrounding your opponent. And he starts unloading, and he doesn't kill outright more than 1, which is good for me. I mean, if there's a Battle Shock test, I only have to take a test for at a -1, which is great. That's the benefit of elite troops and multiple wound units. But he does 3 wounds onto the next one. If he did 1 more, it would have been -2. So I get to fire back, but I don't have to fire back with this unit. I can pick a different unit. And I know I'll be able to get to that unit eventually. So I want to try and neuter one of these units that hasn't gone yet. So I go after the clan rats, and I unload with the I don't know if it was the entirety of the model. It might have been. I think I might have whiffed with the Ghoul King, but then the Terrorgeist came through and killed off, I think, 6. Which is good. And here's an important tactic, guys. If you should try to spread out your attacks, because if a unit doesn't even lose 1 model, and it's not a wound, it's model, you have to slay something, remove a model from the combat, it doesn't have to take a battle shock test. And of course, if Inspiring Presence is put on it, then it doesn't also have to take it. But if you at least do 1 wound, it has to take a test. And if they have bad leadership, like the Skaven typically do, then you have a good chance that you could start, this effectively the same way as Crumble. They have to take leadership rolls, and if they fail that leadership roll with the subtraction for the, essentially what it was a combat result, the combat modifiers, the Battle Shock test is wherever every slain model is subtracted from your roll. If you already have a bad leadership, you're going to start losing models, and then you're going to dwindle to nothing. So he then follows up with his attacks and tries to take some wounds out on my Terrorgeist and Ghoul King. I don't think he does any. And then I get to fight back with my Cryptars. And in doing so, I kill about, 5, maybe 6 of his Storm Vermin. And the Cryptars, they did their job. They did a good job. They only lost 1 guy. He lost a bunch. But he had already put his Inspiring Presence on those, which was very smart, on those Storm Vermin. So they didn't have to take a test, even though they lost a bunch of guys. And I passed my test without a problem. I didn't have to lose anybody else. So in the attack with the ghouls who failed to do any wounds, he wiped them completely out. I mean, he not only, well, let's also remember, he's right next to that ruins, which allows for rerolls to wound. So he had no problem destroying them completely. So my speed bump was not much of a speed bump. And then after Battle Shock, this Clan Rat unit lost like 6 guys, and with a -6 when you're already at a 7, it just lost everything that was left. So -1 Clan Rat unit, and I'm looking pretty good here. So his turn, he moves in his Clan Rat unit from the side, and now he still gets to charge. Now it's a random charge, and he has to stop within 3 inches before he with a regular move. But in the charge phase, he should be easily able to get this, and just maybe a 2 or 3 would fail. So he should be able to get a bunch of guys in here to help his remaining storm vermin against my Cryptars. So he then moves up his remaining Clan Rats who have spears, and he keeps them in formation. And it's very smart because the square bases allow you to get really close, and with spears you get a 2-inch range. So the back ranks all get to attack when he finally gets in on the Terrorgeist. So his intention is to charge in the charging phase, and all these guys are going to get to attack. That's a lot of attacks. I only have a 5-up save. Not so great. So he swoops his units, his weapon teams around the side of this obstacle, and opens up with one of them and just peels off 4 wounds. Now this is not going to apply to Battle Shock rolls, to combat res, but still, it's 4 wounds. Now I have 14 wounds on this model. That's pretty damn good. But 4 wounds, it's not going to take much to totally wipe out my Ghoul King and the Terrorgeist. So I got to get cracking. So then he charges in, and you can see all these guys are able to get in. We weren't exactly precise on it, but we could tell. If they're all in, the 3rd rank is within 2 inches when you're base to base. He's going to get all those attacks, which is great. And well, not for me. So he moves again. He made a charge with the other Clan Rats, and he also charged in with his Warlord against my Cryptars. And then we start doing combat. So I'm able to. Oh no, he's able to pick the first unit to fight. So he wants to try and take as much damage on my Ghoul King and Terrorgeist as possible, and he does. He does 5 more wounds. So he had all those attacks, all those wounds, and enough that I failed a good portion of them. And now I've been knocked down, I think, 1 or 2 tiers. I have now fewer attacks. And my streams now are no longer 3 dice; they're only 2 dice. So that's not a good thing either. So we go ahead and I forget exactly what caused this one Clan Rat to die, because I don't think we're in Battle Shock yet. And this might be that one. I have one Cryptar that was able to attack his storm, this Clan Rat unit on the left. Now the reason why I didn't go all out on the Storm Vermin is because the Storm Vermin are now still Inspiring Presence, and they don't have to take Battle Shock tests. So if I don't wipe out the unit, they're not going to then take any additional damage if they fail their Battle Shock test. So what I did was I at least put that one guy who was able to do some damage to this Clan Rat unit, and I managed to kill off 2. So now he's going to have to take a test at -2, because these guys are unprotected. So I go ahead and unload the rest of the Cryptars against his Storm Vermin, and I kill 4. So not bad, but he still has like a couple left. He doesn't have to test. His Warlord then strikes, kills off one of my Cryptars outright. And you can see that there's a little bit of gap. Don't worry, guys. The way I don't know if you can strand units in this game. It doesn't seem like you can. I probably should have taken off a guy on the other side because it would have made sense. But I started taking off this one. We corrected that. We moved everything over later. Excuse me. And then I think the rest of either the Storm Vermin or the Clan Rats then unload and do a tremendous amount of damage. I think this is the Clan Rats, and they were able to get those rerolls to wound, and I lose 3 more models and 3 wounds on one of the last 2 remaining Cryptars. So Cryptars are in trouble here. I may be able to heal back some of those wounds on that second Cryptar that's left, but I can't get these guys back on these units, because unlike 8th in that regard. So I'm able to fight back. I think it was with this might have been my Ghoul King or my Terrorgeist, I don't know which, but I'm able to divide my attacks amongst, I can take my one character and unload all of it into, all of his attacks into one unit, and then Terrorgeist can attack another, so you can split in that way. And so I kill some of the some storm vermin in one unit, and then I peel off like 6, I think, of the clan rats in this unit, which really works well for me. Now, I don't believe that. Let's see, Battle Shock. I think with Battle Shock, with all the losses I took, I needed maybe, I think it might have been a 5 or a 4. I rolled real low, but I lost another one of my my Cryptars. They were unprotected because I used another command ability instead of the Inspiring Presence one. So now I'm down to one lone Cryptar, and as you can see, he's all the way off to the right, and we shuffled him back to the left. He should stay in hand-to-hand combat because they're still in the midst of a combat. So I took the guys off on the wrong side. And then he starts rolling, and he only loses 2 more of the clan rats that were on the left. So he took it was good that I put the attacks in. I got 2 more guys to go to 2 more casualties on his side because of that. I don't think I would have wiped out the entirety of the storm vermin. But the storm vermin, I don't think were protected this turn. He might have put it on something else or used a different ability. And after a roll with all the damage they took, they got wiped out. And then the remaining clan rats that were against my general and the Terrorgeist also were wiped out. I mean, he was at like a negative, I think. He'd taken so many wounds, and their base leadership is like a 6 or maybe a 7. So this is what the board looks like now, and things are starting to get really interesting. You know, I've got a couple units now on the far right that really should be able to just waltz up there and take the objective. But he's got enough stuff that's left, and he's certainly got a lot of shooting left. And my Ghoul King is in trouble. He's got 9 wounds out of 14, so he's only got 5 left, and he's been showing already that he can't defend well against these shooting attacks or mass attacks. So I believe this is, and I'm not really sure. Oh yes, he goes ahead and he moves up his weapon teams. Clearly he's going to try and unload as many of these rattling shots as he can at my general, try and finish him off. And then he moves his general up, his warlord, so that he can get within a charge range of those ghouls. Now, it's just a regular move, but it's a long charge. He probably is at a 12. It may have been 11. So it's smart, because if he's able to lock that unit up, I have one less of those 2 units that can try to run up to the crater and steal the battle. So he moves that guy up, unloads with his one of his rattling guns, and he's trying to peel off some. This was a mistake, I think. He tried to peel off some of these ghouls. I know he wants to try and thin them out so that in this next turn, there's at least one more turn I've got before I can get the objective, if I even make it there. If he wants to thin these guys out, he might be able to shoot them up in later turns. But the fact is, because he did that, his warlord's now too far away to even declare a charge. So that really kind of worked against him. So now, even though I lost 3 guys, that ghoul unit is still is free. Even though it would have been like a 11 or 12 on the charge roll, if he made it, it would have been really bad news for me. So he unloads with the other rattling gun and just kill. Of course, he must roll like 14 or 16 shots out of this rattling gun and killed my general and his Terrorgeist. Now, no crumbles, which is good. I'm glad to see that. I lost a big model, but he was going down and he did a lot of damage. But I've got to make up for it, and I still got a Hail Mary. Again, I was outmatched in terms of the total, punch power and model count, and now I've lost the biggest heavy hitter I have in my army. So I'm in trouble. I need that objective now. So he, instead of charging the ghouls, which is what his warlord was going to initially do, he charges the Cryptar, and between all these units, they just blow up the Cryptar. They fold in, and goodbye Cryptar. Sorry for the blurry picture, guys. And then we go to turn 4. Now, this is again one of those situations where, hey, you got to roll. Who's going to go first? It's a new turn. If I get the roll, I can start running up to the objective. If he gets the roll to go first, he could effectively stop me with a move and then a charge, and then with shooting could potentially wipe out at least one of these units. So it's really critical now. And again, this thing could swing either way, and it already has swung a little bit, even though it's a small game. I get the first turn. In turn 4, I get the first turn. So what do? Of course, I run my ghouls up. I need to get them as quickly as possible to this, and then hope to survive the turn. So I roll my not charges, runs, and I get one of the units with a 12, and he goes right to that side of the board. So he's also got some terrain in front of him, so he's a -1 to be hit. That's the 6 that are on the right, and the other one is kind of a string that it's going to be hard for his warlord to be able to make that charge. But if he makes it, there's a good chance that between shooting and with the warlord, will that unit out, because the warlord will probably kill like 3-4 of those guys, and then with battle shock, I'd be hard pressed unless I roll really well, not to just not to lose the rest of them from a crumble. So he goes ahead to charge, and he fails. He does some shooting, doesn't do enough damage, and that's the game. So I was outmatched, even though you saw a Terrorgeist on the field, guys. I know some people are going to be like, well, you had a Terrorgeist. Look, Terrorgeist, the big monsters and models in this game have lots of wounds. Some of them have decent saves. But as they take wounds, they get worse. They get weaker. I like that metric. I like that mechanic. And the idea is that he outmatched me with more models and more effectiveness. If this was not an equivalent wound, even if wound for wound, he had a lot more than I did. But because of that, there's a balancing factor in the sudden death scenario, and I took the harder of them also. But the idea is that this balanced out the game, and it was very exciting for us. We had a lot of fun, and Andrew expressed that. I actually did an interview. I might post his video as well, and he said he had a good time with it, and he saw that it doesn't feel like it's a competitive game. It would need a lot of tweaks. That's exactly what I've been saying. But we enjoyed ourselves. We had some laughs. There was a lot of stuff that was that was happening where it could have gone either way. There was no foregone conclusion here. This was not no default I win situation, and there was a lopsided list, and we didn't do any points. We didn't have any points. We didn't write out our lists. We just took models from the guideline of the War Scroll. So I encourage you to try to test these things for yourself. It can create a narrative. It does not have to be absolutely equivalent, balanced lists against lists. Obviously, if somebody has like 200 models on the table and you've got 20, that's going to be a big difference. And I would hope those 20 are big, beefy multiple wound guys, but you know what? You could create scenarios like the Last Stand of the 300 and stuff in Thermopylae. You could create those types of scenarios that could also be fun. It could be like against all odds. Defending against overwhelming numbers. That could be interesting. Now, is it competitive? No, it's beer and pretzels, of course, but it could still be a tremendously fun game, and I'm sure that over the course of time, if GW doesn't release their own version, if they ever will, the rumors are they won't, but then there's some rumors now that are coming up that there might be some organized list building methods. But even if there isn't, and the community builds it, okay, fine, the community builds it. I'm not sure how much I trust that. It's going to take a while before it filters through the entire community. It takes a while before it becomes standardized, and it takes a while before anybody really trusts in it and feels that it's appropriate. Everybody's going to have their system. But the fact is, though, is that, put your models on the table, give it a shot. It didn't cost you anything. The PDFs are free. Go try this game. If you spent all the money on all these Warhammer armies, even if you have one big army, that's expensive. That's a lot of time, a lot of painting. Rather than sell them for pennies on the dollar on eBay right now, because everybody who's who's acting on impulse is trying to unload their armies, and they're great values if you want to buy them, by the way. But rather than go and ditch the stuff, play the game, see what it's like. Maybe you might like it. Maybe you might just want to play it once in a while. If it's not the principal game you play all the time, if you're not fully devoted and dedicated, you might enjoy it from time to time. Is it the game that we knew up until 8th edition? No, it isn't. It's different. You can see the different mechanics. It's unfortunate. There are things I'm going to miss. I like about 8th edition. There's some things I don't like about 8th edition, but this is the new game, and this is going to be supported for quite some time. And if you give it a shot, you might like it. And if you don't, hey, good luck to you, and good luck to everybody. Have a great day. Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you the first of what is hopefully many Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports. Now this is a test. I am testing out various different aspects of the rules, trying to show people in the community how the game is played now with the Age of Sigmar, so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not this is the game for you. I encourage you to try it though. The PDFs are downloadable for free. If you're already a Warhammer Fantasy player, you've got at least one army, maybe several. It doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of time to go and give it a shot. It is a different game There are different rules. You'll obviously still be able to use all of your models, unless you're cast dwarves. That's a whole other story, but maybe that's coming. But you're able to build out an army and play the game, and it's obviously going to be a different mechanic in terms of how to play. It may not be everybody's flavor. I'm not judging anybody. All I'm doing is suggesting, hey, give it a shot. And what I'm just trying to show is, what does it look like? How does it play? How is there balance? And how is there imbalance? And what are the things that are different about it? And whether or not you like it, you can make up your own mind. Now, the biggest source of contention right now is the fact that there is no real organized list building method. And a lot of people are very concerned that the way that you build an army is just Wild West. It's open, and it just creates all kinds of unbalance. But I think a lot of people are missing that there are some conventions that are built in to try and combat that. I think a lot of people are also missing the fact that not all battles and not all combats and not all even real world situations, even though this is not real world, are always fair and balanced. And if you're looking for something that is built for a competitive environment, this is not this is not your game out of the box. It may come to pass with comp, or maybe something that GW releases down the road, or the community eventually builds. But hey, let's deal with that another time. Let's try this game with the rules as they've been released and see how it works. And the biggest thing again is lopsided armies, if there's no way to even things out with points, and whether or not the sudden death situation, that rule actually can counter that, if it comes into play. And then of course the most important thing is it fun? Is it challenging? Is it interesting? And of course also, is it the kind of game that I want to play? You will only be able to decide that when you play. So here's my experience, and what we decided with the guy that I linked up with is a competitive